Thanks very much, Joe, and thanks very much, everyone, very much for having me to speak today. I suppose, as well as being here as part of the network, I'm also a director of the Association of Local Environmental Record Centres. So, for those of you who don't know, Alert was formed in 2009, so been in existence for a while. There are, as shown in the map here, record centres covering pretty much the whole of Great Britain. Might even be missing, I think, one in Ireland there. And those in green all belong to the association, which has grown up steadily over this time. And local record centres, as I said, more than 40 in the country, essentially run to provide people with local wildlife information, to support recording activities, and to do a whole range of things which support such work. Excellent. So Record Centre does a whole range of different things, but unsurprisingly, from what was discussed yesterday, and I think what also been mentioned earlier this morning, data is hugely important, and managing all that data that comes into different centres around the country and passing it on in a usable form to others, hopefully as speedily as possible, requires an effective database. So what I'm going to be talking about today, a little bit of background, what's happening with what is at the moment perhaps the most important database in the country in the short term, and what might be happening in the longer term, and I think importantly why we should all care about what is happening. So there are two main different types of database system in use at present. The traditional desktop-based system, such as Recorder, which has gone through various different guises, Marine Recorder, and MapMate as well. And the way things work, I don't really know how many Recorder users there are in the country because of the way it's been distributed. I can tell you that of the 43 plus record centres, 40 currently have it in use. For MapMate, there are about 10,000 registered users, 5,000 of them active, and 2,000 of those really active. So desktop systems still rather important. The other main system, which has grown up pretty much over the last 10 years, is the online, out there somewhere in the cloud system. Systems include Living Record and iRecord, those systems which are based pretty much on Indicia, and a number of other systems, including the mighty Bird Track. So, it's not moving, is it? Sorry about that.
I'm not quite sure why that's not working.
Have we lost the slideshow?
Yeah, it's in slideshow. Yes,
I've lost the cursor as well now.
should we just try escaping and opening it up again?
Yeah, please do.
Sorry.
Right, so in addition to there being a quantity of desktop-based systems,
Not moving. Sorry.
that's okay. Sorry. A lot of people today use online recording in its various forms, and that includes iRecord itself and other Indicia systems.
Does that work?
It works, I hope.
Yes.
Stored. I have a choice now, it seems. We'll stick with this one.
Sorry about this, Steve.
That's no problem. Sure, I did something to it. So a quantity of online systems as well, which include iRecord, I think in particular, but various systems have been developed by local record centres, also based on Indicia, including a number used by local record centres, and Sobrec use one of those, whereas Cothnod have their own online system which feeds directly into their own database. So a range of different solutions around the country, and together there are also a quantity of apps, so you can record with a little machine in your pocket, which also feed into those various systems, such as those based on Indicia and others, and also a quantity of useful tools such as Rich Bergmar's Gilbert 21, which help the recorder out in the field rather than being concerned more with getting records to some central storage point. So all these systems have been extremely useful. It's probably true to say that the majority of records on the gateway, apart from those perhaps of the birdie persuasion, have at some stage passed through some recorder database.
Is it 9? 9?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, that one.
There have been discussions about the future of recorder for some while, which you can follow on the MBN forum, but it's been announced just recently by JNCC that the consortium that supports, the functioning of recorder have decided to pull the plug on it at rather short notice, which has alarmed some users, but it'll be possible, I think, to meet those various needs that they have in the future. So there was this announcement from the NBN a while ago, which was talking about looking at so there was an announcement some while ago, thanks Joe, it's probably down to me, about what might happen in the future, and it was planned that there will be some investigation of different systems that were online that would
Use that book.
Okay.
Okay.
Back here again, okay.
That one there.
That one.
That one, move it forward.
Fantastic. So it was announced that, that there will be an investigation and a consultation with the various Recorder 6 users with a decision to replace Recorder 6 once it was possible to replicate all its wonderful functionality that had been built into the system in the future. But not very much happened for a while, and then last week it was announced that support for Recorder 6 was going to be dropped. Now, as I mentioned earlier, record centres are very keen on databases in various forms, and in the southeast region, the record centres there had already decided to undertake some sort of consultation into how many people are using Recorder, how big their databases are, the purposes they have for it, exactly what they see as being the future for Recorder 6. And importantly, since the model with Recorder 6 was that you paid about £30, you got your copy of Recorder, and then you could use it forever without paying any support whatsoever, with that being provided by the Recorder Consortium, through particularly the services of Mike Bardelli and Sally Rankin. Very keen to find out exactly how many people are using Recorder 6, what they think their needs are for the short term, since there is of the end of the year likely to be no support for Recorder whatsoever. So there is this consultation that went live last week. I'll provide the link to that. It would be great if everybody who has or does use Recorder could respond to that, so we get information about exactly what people do need. So if you can, please do fill it in. It's live until December 15th, and please tell others who do use Recorder as well to complete that too. Looking further forward, Recorder 6 is very much of its time, although it had a brilliantly designed database model. Various things that are possible now simply didn't exist or weren't even thought of then. So what we'd also like to do is have a second part consultation that looks about what future needs of databases for a whole range of different users, those collecting data, those managing it in record centres perhaps, and elsewhere, those wanting to use different information beyond just species and habitat records, what they want for the future. And I think what we'd particularly like to do is have an initial stage where, with you and others, we can work out exactly what form that consultation should take, and make sure we direct it to all audiences that would be likely to be interested in it, so that we can get a complete answer that will guide then the consultation that is then put together, so we have a very clear picture that can inform what happens with, I think, databases for the whole network, but particularly what might be sort of, used to succeed Recorder in the longer term. And it's just worth commenting on this, which was shown yesterday from the SBIF consultation about the different flows of data, and some recorder system is going to have to be able to deal with all these, with the information coming in effectively from lots of different sources, managing it so that the information is sorted, labelled with metadata, and then made available easily in lots of different forms, and preferably as quickly and easily as possible. I also want to talk about why that sort of consultation is important too. I think it's necessary that we get whatever does follow right, because there have been a whole range of different database and other systems that have been developed and then perhaps haven't seen their full potential. The conservation management system was formerly a stablemate of Recorder, developed at English Nature at the time, a system for planning and implementing the management of nature reserves using an access database. That was moved across to exegesis, and it now thrives there and manages to generate enough to provide £300,000 a year for its development. But it's used by the national agencies, major conservation bodies such as RSPB and the wildlife trusts, but hasn't penetrated to all those other users for, say, the second tier of wildlife sites that are so important, and mentioned in the Audit Review as well. So perhaps things could have been done differently there that simply weren't taken account of, and something we'd like to avoid for the future. But the important thing is that system does manage to fund itself quite happily. The Biodiversity Action Reporting System was provided by JNCC, free, no charge whatsoever, training courses in its use, and everybody was encouraged to use it, and even had their arms twisted behind their back by funders to use it. However, although it became sort of spatial features were added to it later on, it never became a tool that was useful for those actually carrying out the work on the ground. It was more for sort of collecting information in at JNCC Central, so that it could be seen how much work was going on. But since people didn't like it, despite it being free, only less than 50% of actions were ever reported on it. So again, whatever is designed needs to be fit for the purpose we want. Recorder itself, lots of time went into developing this robust battleship of a database, and people who had loved Recorder 3 but found they couldn't use it on Windows systems anymore, decided that they wouldn't wait for Recorder Lite and Recorder Web, which we don't think probably is possibly the first online database if it had been implemented, and many of those moved across to MapMate instead, because there was nothing else that would meet Recorder's needs so well at the time. So again, a mistake that needs to be avoided for the future. Second site, probably very few of you will have heard of, was a database system online provided for free that was developed for the management of those local wildlife sites, particularly in relation to, it was oriented towards the reporting on National Indicator 197 that existed at the time, It was a brilliant system that allowed lots of people to use it, access it online with different levels of permission, so you could have whoever's organising the whole work across the county, seeing or managing to plan tasks and set those for different groups working at different levels, all of those then able to see what had been going on, what was planned, what the task was for next week. It was a fabulous system, but never managed to secure support, so it sadly died a death. So whilst it was brilliant, failing to secure the necessary funding to get it going properly, to promote it, and then to pay for its ongoing support, sadly saw the end of that system. So again, something else to avoid. And there are various other examples that could be used to highlight sort of various failings in the past. So it's important that we consider the needs, capabilities, motives of the intended audiences, recorders, database managers, all those different information users, and information uses in 5 years' time will probably be very different to what they are now, because uses now are already rather different to what they were 5 and 10 years ago, and certainly when Recorder 3, which is celebrating its silver anniversary this year, was first developed by Stuart Ball at JNCC. There are a whole lot of things coming up. One of the things in relation to this will be the 25-year environment plan, things based around natural capital, ecosystem services, what database will be able to bring together species and habitat data at the national to local level to fit that information in with all the other environmental information that will be used in the management of natural capital and ensuring that ecosystem services are effectively managed, that biodiversity offsetting locations are strategically sited, and all that. So that's pretty much it. We had this consultation on Recorder 6, which we'd very much like you to complete now. Do get involved with the design of the next stage of the future database that might eventually replace that. And a huge thank you to all those who have been involved with the development of Recorder 6. And finally, I can tell you that following on from the JNCC announcement, Mike Wadelli has been able to secure a small amount of money from a very generous mystery benefactor that will keep the current level of support for Recorder 6 going on for another year. But it'll be very interesting to see what the responses are to the consultation about the level of support that people want and are willing to pay for in the future as well. Thank you.